this is going to be great.
Welcome to the White House pod with David A.R.
I'm gonna finish what I started.
It's not easy. It's simple.
Mitch Albom, thank you so much for being on the show today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Where are you coming from?
Right now I'm in Southern California, in San Diego, on a book tour for my latest book called Twice. We're traveling around the country quite a bit.
It looks like you've only had 8 #1 New York Times bestsellers. So do we hope to make this number 9, or is or what do we?
I'm not too worried about that. I'm just happy if people read it.
Have you always been an author? I mean, it seems like you're a screenwriter, philanthropist, journalist, broadcaster. Like, what was the first? First of all, where are you from? Are you from San Diego? No.
No. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, South Jersey and Philadelphia.
Okay. And how did we get in the entertainment industry, or was this, or broadcasting and everything? Was this parents?
Well, it's a long, convoluted story, but I was, I actually was a musician at first, when I first came out of school. And then when that didn't work out, I kind of volunteered for a local newspaper, started writing, found that I had some kind of ability in the writing field. Ended up going back and
when you
getting
started
a degree.
newspapers writing, were you in college, high school, or had you graduated
No,
from college?
I was already out. I was already graduated from college. I had already lived overseas as a musician, had been in New York as a starving musician, had gone that whole route. So several years after college. And then I basically just volunteered for a local newspaper, and I guess I'd never written anything up to that point, but I found that I had some aptitude for it, and they were interested in it, unlike the music business, which wasn't all that interested in me. And so I started working for them, and one thing led to another. I went back, got a master's degree in it, and while I was there, I worked for a sports magazine to help pay my tuition. And then when I got out, there were sports offers for me, so I ended up becoming a sports writer, which was my career for a good 15, 17 years.
For what? What was your favorite sport to write for at that time, or was it niche, or were you able to write for everything?
I covered everything. I was the lead columnist for the Detroit Free Press, and I was on ESPN Sports Reporters every Sunday, and so we talked about everything. I mean, there's very few sporting events, to be honest, that I haven't been to. I can't really think of any. I've been to Olympics and Super Bowls and World Series and Stanley Cup Finals and NBA championships. I've run with the Bulls in Pamplona. I did the Iditarod, I did the America's Cup. So all of them. And then the answer to your question is wherever there was a good story. I don't care what the sport is. What you look for, at least what I looked for, was humanity and something that I could use the sport story to draw some kind of bigger conclusion from. And so that can come in anything. I mean, that can come in a dog sled race, or that can come in the last play of the Super Bowl.
Do you have like a top 3 to 5 stories that you wrote or that you covered? Or is it hard or is it like every story was your top one?
No, no. Sometimes you get stuck writing, just kind of a middle of the road baseball game or a football game. So there were, and I've written thousands and thousands of sports columns over 40 years. So I would say, the ones that were my favorite were ones that probably were smaller than you would think. There was the ones that I wrote about the Iditarod were a lot of fun. I wrote a column about a guy at the Olympic Games who nobody ever heard of, and he pulled up lame and during a trial run, during a heat for the 400 meters, and his father came out of the stands and ran onto the track and lifted him and marched him around the track just so that he could finish. And I ran down and talked to him, and his father said, well, I just couldn't not let him finish his race, and not be recorded as participating in the Olympics. I taught him how to run, and I taught him how to run when he was a little baby boy by putting his feet on my feet and maneuvering him. And here he was doing that same maneuver again, at the Olympic Games. And I wrote that story. It was one of the most popular things I've ever written, and most people never had any idea who the runner was. It was just that they related to the fact that it was a father, taking care of a son in an hour of need. So I always would look for those kinds of stories, and I'd say that those were my favorite ones.
Yeah, I could see why that would be just an unbelievable story to that would resonate with people. Is that what happened? Like when you did your the like Tuesdays with Morrie, right? That was, you wrote that. It became a movie. Did you find that people, even back in the sports stories time, were trying to make movies out of these stories? Because there's, as a movie maker myself, obviously it all starts with that, with the genesis of the story.
Yes, I mean I've had movies made of my books. I mean a number of them. I've written some of them, not written other ones. It's more from books, I think, than articles. Although I've had some people try to make movies out of some of the columns I wrote too, and some of the sports things I wrote. I think they like books better when it's time to make a movie because they got the whole story already, and they just have to shrink it down. Whereas sometimes with a column or an article, they have to embellish it, and then they got to hire a writer to go figure that out. But yeah, I try to look at it as books are not movies and movies are not books. And if you're going to work in one field or the other, accept that that's the field that it is and work within the parameters of that field. And if you're going to have your book turned into a movie, don't be surprised if 3/4 of the book isn't in the movie, because if they made a movie that matched every page of your book, it would be about 12 hours long. And so you understand that, and you understand the rhythm of a movie, and the pacing of a movie is different than the pacing of a book, and a TV show, same kind of thing. So I've gotten used to it at this point. I've had 12 books that I've written, non-sports books, and they've all been optioned for films, and and some have already been made, some are being made, some are being remade. So I understand the business and its frustrations and its pleasures.
What's the one that you're most proud of that doesn't look like it bastardized your book? Is it Tuesdays with Morrie, or that's?
They all. I have to say that everybody I worked with has been pretty respectful. Oprah Winfrey made Tuesdays with Morrie, and I suppose I have a special place in my heart for that because Jack Lemmon, played Morrie. He won the Emmy for it, and Hank Azaria won for playing me, and the movie won, and it was my first go around. But I would say it was probably a favorite because I got to know Jack Lemmon, who was a great guy, and remained friendly with him until his death. And I'm still friends with Hank, who I just saw last year. But they're all. It's like picking your favorite child. You wouldn't do that. They're all good.
I guess is that a rule that you can't do that? You think about, obviously I think it is a rule that you can't pick your favorite child. Like that's a rule. Don't do that. But is it a rule that you can't pick your favorite movie, or you can't pick your favorite, movie that was turned or book that was turned into a movie?
It may be, in both cases, maybe that it's just not something you should say out loud.
All right, so you're coming from San Diego right now. You're on a book tour. Are all book tours the same, or do they change? Have you noticed any difference in how many books have you written?
Well, 12 now, non-sports. A couple before that were sports books. So, it's changed quite a bit. The book touring business and the book promotion business has changed a good deal. It at the beginning, I'd say like in the 90s, everybody went on book tour. Even mid-level authors went on book tour. The book publishing industry could afford it. And then you would go into towns and there'd be like a Good Morning Houston or a Good Morning, Cleveland or something like that. You'd do like those local shows, and then there'd be 3 or 4 radio stations that you would do over the course of the day and talk to the local newspaper. And then at night you would go to a bookstore or a theater and talk, so you were busy all day long. Now there's fewer and fewer outlets like that. There aren't so many, Good Morning Sacramentos anymore. There are very few radio stations that interview authors. TV shows aren't all that interested in authors. Talk shows aren't all that interested. Much more interested in movies and podcasters and things online. And social media has become so much more of the way that you reach your audience now, where there wasn't any back then. The only way you could reach people was going out. And book publishers don't send very many authors on book tours anymore. It has to be a pretty sizable book, and that they can expect to make back what they're going to invest in it. So it's changed quite a bit, but at its core, when you're out there, you're still talking to readers, talking to people who are, interested in your work, hopefully, talking to people like you, and I take it as a positive. It's a blessing, to be able to have this opportunity. There are a lot of authors who would love to just go on a book tour anywhere, across town, So I don't take it for granted.
I wrote one book, just for everybody out there. It was not a New York Times bestseller. I did get a very nice advance for it, but I did also not get invited on a book tour. So as an author, it was, I am one of those poor people. It makes sense of why they should always put you on a book tour. Have you stayed with the same publisher all these years, or?
No, actually, so the first publisher I had was published 2 of my sports books. And then when I had the idea for Tuesdays with Morrie, which was just done to pay Morrie's medical bills, and I went to them because they had published my sports books, and I said, I have this idea. It's not a sports book, but it's about this old man who's dying, talking to a young man about what's really important in life once he knows he's going to die. And I think could be a special book. And they said, no thanks. If it's not a sports book, not interested. So then I started going around town in New York trying to find a publisher, and almost everybody said no to the idea of Tuesdays with Morrie, not interested.
Was it because
boring.
also that you had a stigma that they associated you with sports?
Yeah, I'm sure that was part of it. Yeah, I had a guy say, you don't even know how to write a memoir. And, I don't know why he thought that, but I guess he didn't think much of sports writers. So we found one publisher who was willing to do it, but we only signed a contract for one book, that book. So then that book came out, and they only printed 20,000 copies of it or so, and they thought that would be that'd be the end of it. I thought I'd have them in the trunk of my car for the rest of my life. Now that book has sold, I don't know, 18 million, something like that. And so, of course, I only had one. The contract was only for one book with them. So then when it came time to do another book, now everybody was interested in having me join them, but only to write Wednesdays with Morrie, or Thursdays with Morrie, or Chicken Soup with Morrie. So I didn't want to do that, and because that's not why I wrote Tuesdays with Morrie. I wrote it, to pay Morrie's medical bills, and I wrote it as a labor of love. And just because something's successful doesn't mean you have to do 1,000 versions of it. And so I wanted to write a novel, and there weren't very many places that were interested in me writing a novel, even for all the success that Tuesdays with Morrie had. They said, "No, you're crazy. You can't write a novel. You don't know how to write a novel." And I said, "Well, that's what you told me about Tuesdays with Morrie." So I found one publisher who was willing to do that, to take the novel first and sign with them. And actually, when I was telling them the story of that book, which is called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, when I got to the end of the story, one of the people in the room burst into tears. A woman, didn't know who she was. She burst into tears, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. It was just such a moving story. I'm sorry I cried." And so when I left there, I told my literary agent who was with me, I said, let's go with this publishing house, and whoever that woman was, find out her name, and let's make her my editor, because she clearly knows she gets me, And that's what happened. So she became my editor for the next 4 books.
Wow.
And then I
Which
stayed
publisher
there.
was that? Can we talk about which publisher that was?
Hyperion.
Okay.
And then they went out of business. So then I had to find another publisher. And so then I found a new publisher, which is Harper, and that's
You
who I'm
couldn't
with
keep
now.
Hyperion open? I mean, with your 50 million copies that you sell?
I don't think it was keeping them open. I think that Disney
Yes.
owned them, and I think they wanted to kind of get out of that business. I don't know. It's beyond my pay grade, but they went out of business. So.
Do you wake up and go, oh, wow, today I'm going to do this? Like, it seems like you're pretty clear about your vision and what it is that you invest your time in. And it's a whole lot of different things.
Well,
do you have to?
Yeah, I kind of have to organize my day that way because I am, unlike a lot of writers who are blessed, as far as I'm concerned, to just sort of write. That's what they do, and they kind of organize their life just about their writing, which would be wonderful, but I'm not currently in that situation. Most 60-70% of my life is in philanthropic work, and I operate an orphanage in Haiti that I go to every month. I run a big organization in Detroit where I live that runs 9 charitable organizations at a time, and so a good deal of my time is spent on that stuff. And so if I don't organize the day, in chunks, it would be impossible to be a creative person. So I have to get up early in the morning, and I write first thing in the morning when there's no interruptions and no phone calls and no TV and no internet, no anything. And I just kind of take the first 3 hours of the day to just sort of write. And then after that, I recognize that's all the gas I usually have in a tank. And so I kind of finish up, and it's maybe 10 o'clock, 10:30 by that point, and then I'll start with the other things of my day and kind of lay them out. But I do write every day when I'm working on a book. It's 7 days a week. I get up and work at it, and you have to treat it like a job. I've been blessed to meet a lot of successful writers over my career, and one thing they all seem to have in common is they don't sit around waiting for the bolt of lightning to hit them in the middle of the night, and then they get up and start furiously scribbling, and next thing you know, 6 hours later, they've got a book. That's a movie scene. That's not how it really works. It's more like you get up every morning and you open a vein and you bleed onto the page a little bit, and then you get up the next morning and you do the same thing. And you have to treat it like a job, and you have to work at it. And that's how I approach it.
Do you only write every day when you're actually writing a book, or is there like when you're in between, are you writing like side projects, or do you just take time off from writing?
Yeah, well, it kind of falls into now, like every 2 years I put out a book. So I spend 1 full year writing it, and that's every day. And then in between, when I turn it in, I'll go on tour for 2 or 3 months, be promoting it. I don't, maybe not write all that often during that. And then in between, I'll work on like a screenplay or a play or something like that if I'm working on some other project. And then back over again. And they also have to build in daydream time, which I look at as part of writing. But if you don't have some time to just sort of sit and let your mind wander as to where you want to go and what ideas you want to pursue, you're lacking the raw material. You're a manufacturer that never orders material. You're just pounding and pounding and pounding. At some point, you got to go get the iron or the wood or whatever you're going to work in, and that's the ideas. And so I do count that kind of daydreaming time, even if I'm not physically in my office or behind my keyboard, as writing time, because you're sitting and contemplating how you're going to form these ideas and what one you really want to spend a good year and a half on. It's a long time to be married to one project if you're not crazy about it. So I try to get excited about anything I'm going to write.
Mitch, tell me about Twice. This is out right now, right?
Yes,
as we have to wrap up here in just a little bit. Is it? How did it come to you?
So most of my books, ever since Tuesdays with Morrie, I try to pick a theme that I want to explore, and then I kind of create a story around the theme as opposed to starting with a character or a plot or something like that. And in this case, the theme I wanted to write was about the idea that the grass is always greener. That idea that if I could just redo parts of my life, it would have been better. And particularly when it comes to love and relationships. So I created a story about a guy who actually has the power to do that. His name is Alfie, and he discovers when he's 8 that he somehow has this magical ability to do anything in his life twice. But he has to live with the consequences of the second try. He can't go back and take the first one if he liked it better. And he only gets 2 tries, and that's it. And so he goes through his adolescence kind of, fixing his mistakes and, making the basketball shot that he missed and erasing the embarrassing remark that he made to the cute girl and all that. And then when he becomes a man, he discovers that there's actually one caveat to his power, which he's been using all along, and that is that it doesn't work with love. And in fact, it kind of works the opposite. If you have someone who really loves you and you decide you want to go try somebody else, go back in time and see what it would be like with someone else, that first person can never love you again. You can't ever return to it. They can be in the world, you can talk to them, but you've surrendered that emotion. And of course, at some point in his life, when he thinks he's found the perfect one and whatever, and then something happens and he gets tempted and he has to make a very important decision about his power. So it's a story about, be careful what you wish for when it comes to second chances and what we really would do with our lives if we got to do them over again.
It's like a really common thought of we've thought about this, like what we would do again, right? But I don't know that anybody's actually ever tried to your tagline is, what if you got to do everything in your life again? Like, I've seen a lot of different movies in different veins in that, but nobody's really taken it from a crystal clear idea like you just said.
Yeah, hopefully not. I mean, I'd like to try to be original. I mean, obviously.
It's a New York Times bestseller already, so I think you're doing a pretty good job at it.
Well, I mean, there are time travel books and movies and things like that, but I didn't want to write a science fiction book. I really, the time travel or the science fiction part of it is just to serve the larger theme, which is, would we really be better off with a second chance? And that's why he can't go back and sit on the deck of the Titanic or stuff like that. I didn't want to get into that kind of a story. I just wanted to explore that. What if I got to do that thing over again? Because we all ask ourselves that. What if I had taken that other job? What if I had married that other person? What if I had moved to that other country? And so that sliding doors thing about, what our lives would be like, particularly when it comes to love, because I think we in this country particularly, but probably around the world, we tend to fall in love with the new car smell, Everybody wants the new car smell. Everybody wants the newness of a relationship. And unfortunately, with cars as well as with people, newness fades, And if all you were really in love with was the newness, the freshness, the excitement, you're going to run out of gas. On the other hand, my wife and I, for example, and I'm not holding myself up, but I learned this lesson. My wife and I have been together for 37 years. And wow. Over those years, we have a wall in our kitchen that, despite all the remodeling and all the painting and all this stuff, because we've been in the house for over 30 years, we've never touched that wall, because that wall has all the photos of our relationship on it when we met, and marriage and relatives and happy times and things like that. And there are plenty of moments, I'm sure, where my wife is not crazy about me, and once in a blue moon there'll be one where I might not be crazy about her, but we're crazy about the wall. And sometimes one of us or the other one just stand there staring at the wall and looking at the pictures, and you say, well, this is what we built, and I may be angry now or frustrated now, but this is, I'm not going to give up on this. And it's true, after 37 years, you don't have the new car smell. But if I were to go and be with somebody who has the new car smell, I wouldn't have the wall. And, I'd rather have the wall. And I'd rather have everything that we built. And so I wanted to write a book that kind of embodied that idea. And that's how I came up with Twice.
Pretty cool. Wow. Mitch, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
And I have the best tour. We wish you luck on the best tour ever. God bless you, sir. Thank you again.
God bless you too. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Mitch.